Welcome to the second of our webinars in the spring series. I'd like to introduce Andrew Butt, who is the co-founder of Enable, and myself, who is the sales director. This is the second in our series of webinars, and what we're looking at today is all about smarter partner negotiations and being prepared for that and being able to execute that. So we're looking really to provide procurement teams with the information they need to make really smarter procurement decisions working with suppliers. Today we're going to discuss the tools and the processes available to help really analyse spend data from multiple sources and prepare the commercial teams ready for negotiation. Look at modelling the impact that proposed deals could have on future rebate earnings. Look at how we can drive the supplier conversation and secure more profitable deals, and create a transparent audit trail of deal-related communications. So just to kind of put it into context, we work across a whole number of different companies and different sectors of different sizes. Predominantly, we are working in building materials, industrial and plumbing at the moment, but we do have other sectors that we work with as well. When we're working with these companies, there's a common thread really in all of them, and that's really to look at how we're going to drive some mutual goals. The key thing for us really is working with companies where, as merchants or as distributors, they have a goal to work with the manufacturers to really drive year-on-year growth and market share and profitability. And we kind of look at that in sort of three different ways in terms of offering relevant and comprehensive products to customers where both sides actually want to grow through that process. Really looking at adding value through high margin products and to helpfully success launch new products, which is obviously one of the key drivers for growth. So what we thought we'd do is just sort of kick off and just look at some of the challenges that commercial teams and buyers have. The top one there, which I think is really interesting, is that organisations rely heavily on rebates, often have disconnected functions when it comes to rebates. And are you surprised by that, or what's your view?
Sure. Well, good afternoon or good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending. And the answer is not anymore. Because I have been working with quite a lot of companies now over about an 18-year period, and I was very surprised that many of the world's biggest companies track rebates in silos using spreadsheets, but it's just very apparent that that is what they do. Often the total rebate is greater than the overall profit figure, so it is quite amazing that they work in that way.
Yeah, and I know that we've had several conversations with people, and it's come up time and time again that this silo working where the commercial teams operate in their own kind of bubble compared to the finance team. And I know that in the last webinar we talked about checks arriving into the organisation and nobody really understanding where that check has come from and what it relates to.
Sure. Yeah, well, I think we see that in so many distribution, wholesale and merchanting companies. Then they often the deals are driven by suppliers. So really they're just signing up to supplier deals and just taking what they can get. And so that, as you say, that we've literally had multiple stories of checks turning up for $50,000 or £50,000. And the distributor kind of saying, does anyone know what this relates to? So I think they usually pay it in, but it's really quite surprising.
Sure. And just picking up on some of the other points on some of the challenges there. So we've seen in some organisations, commercial teams are really reactive to developing and managing agreements. For example, reviewing deals at the end of the year or possibly during investment buys. Why do you think that is, Andrew?
Sure. Well, I think the main reason is because these deals are not modelled in a system. They're not set up online. They're all offline, and actually calculating the performance of these deals is hugely time-consuming and difficult to do. So it's just not possible to do it in a sort of real-time or anywhere near real-time basis. and companies just about manage to do it, say, quarterly, maybe monthly in some cases, but sometimes it's even annually. And the sheer amount of effort that goes into to actually track where companies are in relation to these deals is something which can't be done on a regular basis. So there's a real absence of a system to provide that live performance information, and I would say it falls within the 20% of functionality that ERP systems don't cover. So ERP systems will give you 80% of what you need relatively easily, and then the 20% is just a very long tail that goes on forever, and this tends to fall into that 20%. The deals that we come across are often highly complex. There's a very broad range of them, and it's yes, simple deals can be put into ERP systems, but most of them are completely offline.
So the commercial teams, with the complexity of deals they've got, is just trying to manage those on any kind of proactive basis, unless you've actually got some kind of system in place. It's just such a massive challenge for them.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's very, very challenging. I mean, this is just showing some of the different types of deals that exist, and we talk quite a lot about rebates, but there's all sorts of other deals in place as well. So contract support is a typical one which exists, which can be between different parties involving the supplier, the distributor and the customer. There can be overriders on top of deals. There can be deals that the sales team negotiate with customers on top of the rebates that purchasing organise. So trying to get that big picture view is really, really difficult. And I think we see that each of those silo teams you mentioned handle their own kind of spreadsheets, or might even have business intelligence tools or other ways of working. But it's still just looking at individual elements. It's not looking at the whole picture that incorporates everything on this slide.
Sure. So what do you think the effects are on an organisation through this sort of siloed behaviour?
So I was thinking about this, and can you imagine if the stock market or the foreign exchange market was only tracked once a year or once a quarter? Then clearly that would reduce your ability to make decisions and the frequency in which you can make decisions. So the same is true here, and what we find is companies are very slow to react, and they do fail to maximise the opportunity present in the deals that they have in place, and also they fail to fully manage risk because they make decisions late. And you talked earlier about, as for example, year-end approaches or looking at some kind of investment buy, then they might look at the deals. But at that point, it's quite late on, and
Sure.
Some opportunities they're going to really struggle to get, and others are just impossible because they've left it too late. So I think that's a big factor. Another thing is that people spend a huge amount of time crunching data and working on the numbers rather than actually acting on the insight that they get. So instead of actually being able to make decisions and grow their business all day long, they're kind of fiddling with spreadsheets, and that's actually led to a lot of demoralised people. So I think this is quite a significant point. We've seen a lot of staff turnover in departments who are trying to do rebate accounting and put commercial deals together as well.
And very often this applies particularly in sort of the finance area, but sometimes in the commercial area as well. There's only sort of one or two people that are typically managing this, and therefore in some cases, and we've seen that with some of the clients, that represents a big risk to the business by having just one or two people with that knowledge.
Yes.
And if that knowledge walks out the door, then that puts the business at risk.
It certainly does.
Yeah. So what are the challenges that sort of prevent a more proactive approach from the commercial teams?
Well, I mean, I think I'd go back to my earlier point, really, that for me, I see that one of the main challenges is that the deals that the commercial teams put together are not held as data in the systems, that they're actually locked into spreadsheets and other forms of kind of manual processes. And there's a real lack of user-friendly tools to look at this data and make decisions based on it. I mean, there's actually a lot of computational power that you need to track performance and help you make better deals and maximize the impact of current deals. Because if you look at a typical large distributor, they will have hundreds of thousands of products, and they'll also have hundreds of locations that those products are being delivered to every day. And ideally, you really want to be calculating the performance of the deal, certainly on a weekly basis, if not a daily basis. And so if you imagine that you have complex kind of product-specific tiered deals in place, can you imagine trying to actually manually calculate for every product, for every day, for every tier, for every location, what the performance is? It would be an army of people doing it 24 hours a day.
Sure.
So it's just not practical without a system to do that.
Okay. So one of the other challenges I think that we've come across is we've seen commercial teams cut some pretty complex deals with their suppliers. But also I think, and this may be particular in building materials, but if you layer on top of that the complex relationships between the groups, so suppliers, merchants, distributors, end customers, major accounts, it's pretty clear that managing supplier relationships and keeping track of rebates is challenging. Andrew, could you explain a little bit more about the manufacturer-distributor key account relationship and sort of how that affects the commercial team's ability to kind of manage everything that's going on?
Absolutely, yes, yeah. So the complexity does vary quite a lot, but what we find is in quite a few building materials and plumbing manufacturers and plastic manufacturers and so on, you tend to find that the manufacturer is paying rebate to the distributor, and then the distributor is agreeing special kind of project or contract support with customers for specific projects. So it could be a local house building project, for example. And then in addition to that, you may well also have the manufacturer agreeing an additional deal with that same customer. And so nobody has kind of complete visibility to the whole picture, and trying to work out the actual kind of net price that the customer is paying for a product is very, very difficult. So yes, you're right in saying that it's not just rebates between manufacturers and distributors, it's also the customer coming into play and these sorts of really complex lines of communication. So, some of the things on this slide in front of us, like contract support, is a really sort of complicating factor on that.
So one of the other challenges we've identified is really around performance tracking, and obviously that's very important both internally and the external tracking of suppliers. And the challenge, I think, is really aligned with obviously data accuracy, but also I think timing and frequency and the sort of tools available. Some thoughts from you, Andrew, on what the key performance criteria that commercial teams need to track and report both internally and what sort of tools they may use or could use to do that.
Sure. Okay. So I think we're kind of getting into some of the topics now of this webinar, and what we've really summarised here is that over the course of working with lots of businesses who are putting deals in place, there's a range of things that go on and which need to happen. The first is really having a robust forecast, because where companies are generating tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars or pounds of rebate, it's really important to kind of go into a period knowing what the forecast spend will be and what the forecast rebate will be. That's the beginning. So having a robust forecast is very important. And then, of course, actually tracking the actual performance against forecasts. And we spent some time earlier saying that that's very hard to do. I personally am a great believer in trying to get to live performance tracking. So in an industry where a lot of deals are tracked annually, and then some might be quarterly, and that's the sort of frequency we're working to, looking at tracking this on a daily basis is really important. So we're finding that having tools that can allow people to see where they're up to today, how their performance compares to, say, this time last year, and also how it compares to the forecast at the start of the year is really important. And that's important to make commercial decisions in terms of what to buy and changing buying behaviour, but also from a financial point of view that we covered last time, the whole accruals thing, so budgeting correctly for rebate is really important. So, tracking your current performance with your current deals is a really important activity. I think then layering upon top of that is assessing opportunities present in the deals that you're using and executing today. So, based on the tiered deals, for example, where are the opportunities to make more margin, and how should you be adjusting your buying behaviour, and who should you be buying from in order to maximise those opportunities. The risk reporting is kind of the opposite of that, really. So the risk reporting is saying, if we're expecting to hit a certain tier with a certain supplier, where am I most at risk of not making that, and how can I kind of take early action to make sure I do hit the target? Mm-hmm. Because again, if you kind of just look at the end of the year or something, it's often too late, or it's difficult, it's logistically difficult to kind of to make a change. And some of what we've learned is that we see people in demand and inventory planning roles who are looking to replenish stock, and they're doing that by looking at kind of the price list and net price, but they're not looking at rebates. So sure, decisions are being made every day to reorder stock without that visibility. So that's really important. And then from there, once we're kind of tracking our current performance against our current deals, and once we are looking at opportunities present in those and managing the risks, the next thing is looking at negotiating better deals, which again is a key topic for today. So, what can we do to actually negotiate smarter deals for tomorrow or for next year? And a lot of this is different types of scenario modelling. So the by category level is really saying, based on market trends and how many houses we think will be built next year, let's look at different scenarios of what our profitability would look like based on different levels of spend by category. And let's kind of move the sliders around and see that. To do that, you really need to have very accurate data of what you're buying today. It's a very granular level, and have that data by category, so that you can then actually say, okay, let's look at 5% more bricks and 10% less heating, ventilation systems and whatever. So that's the starting point. And I think then from the category level, we drill down into individual supplier deals. So being able to say, okay, we know how the current deal is performing this year, but how about if we bought some more drywalling or some more plasterboard from this particular supplier? How would that affect the deal? So it's planning different scenarios, different what-if scenarios. And of course, I'm talking a lot about rebates here, but what about the actual invoice price? If we're moving some rebate off invoice discount or vice versa, how's that going to work? Cost of distribution, how does that come into all of this? As well as overall working capital. So, if we can get a better settlement discount and we pay early, at the moment interest rates are low, so that can have a big impact. So sure, it's really important, I think, on this modelling to embrace the whole and not just be completely focused on say an individual rebate.
Sure. Yeah.
So I think that those really, I can't remember your question now, Mike, but that those are some of the key sorts of performance activities that we see teams engage with, and what we see as being important.
And what about sort of the internal reporting process back up to the exec level? Having some view of what's happening in terms of the performance of the commercial team and how they're sort of tracking against their targets.
Yeah, sure. No, that's a good point, and it probably is related to that last bullet on the slide, executive workflow. So, at the point of sort of running some different scenarios and modelling different scenarios, we then move into actually proposing a new deal. That needs to go through a workflow. It does go to different levels in the organisation, depending on things like what our forecast spend will be with a supplier. And we need to provide things like a comparative analysis, so we can actually help an executive level person to understand what they're signing off, how it compared to last year, where the sort of benefit is.
And how can commercial teams and suppliers utilise rebates to drive growth, and what information should they be using?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think this is where highly targeted deals come in. They are difficult to do without a system because, again, if you make a deal product specific, maybe geography specific, time specific, in order to say help to launch a new product in a new territory, how do you actually track that? How do you execute it? And I think because of the difficulty in tracking all of this, then rebates have too often become deferred discounts, where they were originally there to drive behaviour and to actually drive this growth for both supplier and distributor, but they've really just become we'll just pay you some discount at the end of the year.
Sure.
But I think the answer to your question is use highly targeted deals to incentivize distributors for selling new products, high margin products where both parties can make money.
Great. In the first webinar, we talked at length about the accuracy of information which will enable finance teams to track missing rebates. And for commercial teams, accuracy of information, as we've discussed in the past 30 minutes or so, is equally important. Could you kind of step through some of the key things that commercial teams need in terms of information and data in order to start developing smarter deals?
Yeah, I certainly can. So zooming in to some of those points that we just went through, the forecasting is an important start, and I think it's really important that organisations have a methodology for creating and maintaining an ongoing purchase forecast. And often we see that starts with a sales forecast. So there's all sorts of factors being taken into account to create that sales forecast, and then a series of algorithms and software which is used, or spreadsheets, or all sorts of things to then derive from that a purchase forecast by month. So that's something to do at the start of a period, let's say a year, and also to do on an ongoing basis to look at the revised forecast effectively as the year actually starts. The next thing from there is on performance tracking, and of course there's many ways to do this, many different formats. This is just one particular format that I happen to like a lot, because what this is really looking at is it's telling us for the start of the year, what did we forecast we would do in terms of purchases, and then what would the rebate be, okay, if we hit those purchases. How does that compare to last year? And obviously the goal is that we're going to buy more and make more. And then how does that compare to the actual so far? So if we're 2 months into the year, then we're going to have 2 months of actuals, and we can look at the sort of rebates that we're accruing already. And then we kind of look at the revised forecast, which is actual so far plus revised forecast for the end of the year, and we can compare that to what we said we'd do at the start of the year and also what we did last year. And it's all on one report, and this should be kind of sorted by many different things. So you've got divisions on the left-hand side. These are obviously only examples. You've then got categories within divisions. You could go by individual supplier. You could go by individual buyer, and really be able to quickly see, where the problems are, and drill down and start to take decisive action. So that is an example of a performance tracker. In reality, this type of thing in Excel is done infrequently and is immediately out of date, and it's very time-consuming to put together, and has got errors in it. But that's something which I think is really important to have. The next thing is in terms of looking at what-if scenarios and planning for the future. So it's all very well tracking performance to date, but how are we going to actually do better? And this is a very standard model, which I'm sure most people have seen before. This one is a diagram put together by A.T. Kearney. So this can be used in a couple of ways. One is to look at opportunities arising in the present deals, to look at where I should place orders and what product I should buy, looking at margin versus volume. Okay, so clearly we want to get things into the top right-hand corner, and if we're going to increase the volume, but we're actually getting no more margin, then we probably should be looking at other options for increasing volume. And then also on an overall category view, being able to look at a particular category and looking at where we currently are in terms of our suppliers, what the volume has been in the last 12 months, what the margin is, and make strategic decisions. So you talk, Mike, about driving supplier conversations, and I think this type of reporting does allow you to do that and to go in with a very clear agenda. Once again, we see it being done in spreadsheets manually, which is very time-consuming and out of date. It's very short, but it's an important thing to do.
Understanding where you are is obviously key to developing a strategy for improving margin and future rebate earnings. So how do commercial teams really begin to model the impact of changing the way they spend with suppliers?
So, as I say, the current approach in many cases is to do it all in spreadsheets, and one benefit of that is there's no external costs. If you have Excel already, then it's time, and it can all be done. But it is manual, it is error prone, it's very time consuming. Arguably there's a lot of opportunity costs because the people doing it could be doing something else, and you can't dynamically drill down. So you can present a particular view after a lot of manual manipulation, and then if someone says, okay, can we now look at this particular supplier or this category, or you almost have to start again. Another route is to use quite standard business intelligence tools. So BI tools can certainly automate some of the steps that you would do manually, but it's still, and there's lots of business intelligence tools on the market, everyone has their preferred one, but it's still ultimately just automating some manual steps. And then the third route is to actually look at a purpose-built rebate management system which can provide a live view, so once again ideally a daily view in a fully automated way.
Sure. Well, let's just step through Dealtrack at a summary level, just to kind of show everyone some of the things that we've talked about.
Sure. Well, that's good. What I'd like to do is kind of really go back through these points, but show you an approach that we provide, which is just one approach, but give you an example of how some of this can be done. And the fundamental process that we work through with Dealtrack is from left to right here. Core to our philosophy is that we really want to be able to calculate the rebate for each product delivered to each branch each day, because from there we can then provide a whole range of analytics, modelling and insights, which I'll demonstrate shortly, and we can look at manipulating that and looking at different scenarios, but we really want to have that lowest level of detail, because what I see is a lot of people fall down with approximation, where they're not going down to that low-level product branch data place, they're just staying at this sort of approximate category level. And as you then start building scenarios, you're kind of approximating approximations, and you don't end up with a useful result. So to do that, we need to pull in the master data that's relevant to deals, which tends to be products and suppliers and branches. And there are other things, but those are some of the key ones. We then can create the actual deals, and it's very important that any system you select does have a whole range of deals in that you use in your business. Most systems on the market, most ERP systems are very simple kind of value or volume or sort of fixed rate deals, which is not really comprehensive enough. So actually creating those trading agreements for each supplier and linking them to the relevant products and branches is very important. The next thing then is to pull in transaction information at that very low level. So it could be sales purchase invoices coming in, or it could be goods receipts coming in, and from there what our software does is it reconciles those transactions with the deals and calculates the rebates for each product, for each branch, for each day. So with a large client of ours, they might have 1 million products in 3,000 locations, and they might have 10,000 deals, and that is all looked at every single day of the week. So that is going on, and we can then do various analysis from there. So what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to dwell on creating deals and financial reporting, because we covered that in the last webinar.
Sure.
Just to whiz through so you can understand the basics, we'll then get into the commercial modelling and some of the tools that we have around commercial. So personalised homepage, which makes it very easy for people to see what they need to do, and the whole system tends to be set up in a supplier-centric way. So you go in and see suppliers that you're responsible for and go into a particular supplier record, setting up the deals, and you can see here just a small selection of the deal types that we have, but setting up each individual deal is very important. And here we can see individual branches that we can select that the deal relates to. So we will earn a rebate when particular products are delivered to particular branches. And on the right-hand side here, we can see, as well as branches, we have products and other dimensions that we can select. So we've been through this in a previous webinar. I'm not going to focus too much on it now. What it does result in, though, is this very granular calculation coming out the other end. And what we're seeing here is for a particular branch in a particular date range, for a particular deal, we received 1,122 units, which was 24,971 value, and we earned 4.27%. So that's the detailed level of calculation. And from there, we can then get into forecasting. So it's possible to set up the accrual targets and thresholds and actually look at where we are now for a particular deal and where we think we're going to end up based on the deals that are in place. So forecasting is something which we cover in quite a lot of detail. What we also then have is having set up those deals in the way that I just went through, having a kind of dashboard of current performance is very, very important. So we can see here some headline numbers. We're actually doing 2% better on guaranteed and 7.5% better on incentive in this case, but we're actually way down on this contribution deal here. We can see things like 1.7% of turnover with this supplier is non-rebatable, so we can actually drill down and find out exactly what that is. For example, I could drill down into this 35% and really see what that's made up of. So in this case, I'm looking at this year versus last year. I'm looking at the different types of rebates that I get across different brands. Now this is only one example, and it's dynamically generated. So this is all live information which comes up straight away and is much better than quarterly or annual.
So this really provides commercial users with the detailed information they need to start to make an assessment on where they are with their current performance, but also where the opportunities could exist.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. And in fact, talking about opportunities, what we're going to look at here is a view of where the biggest opportunities are right now. Right. So this is looking at where can we get the biggest return on investment for additional incremental spend. You can put parameters in terms of, so this could be the inventory planner we talked about earlier, who needs to replenish in a certain category, certain types of products, and they want to look at what they should buy to get the most margin. Now we can pull in different parameters here to look at total margin. That requires pulling in cost price and sell price as well as calculating the rebate, or we could look at rebate only. But this particular report is ordered by ROI, and the biggest one is 55%. So what this is saying is that if we spend just under 125,000, which is a 10% increase on our current spend so far with this supplier, we'll actually generate 68,000 of income, which is 55% of our spend, which is obviously huge. Brilliant. Now, this information is there already, so it's not it's not magic, but what it's doing is bringing it right to the fore. And when you do have thousands of deals and millions of products and so on, it's very hard to get this, and this is on a live basis. So the opportunity and risk reporting is a key thing that we focus on. The next area then that I briefly touched on earlier is really looking at scenario modelling. So it's saying we've got our current deals in, we're tracking the performance on those deals using the executive dashboard that I showed earlier. We're looking at opportunities on a constant basis to maximise those deals. It's now coming to that time of year where we're thinking about next year and looking at creating a better deal. So what we can look at here is different scenarios that are already built and looking at a category basis. So if I go into a category and select a particular category, this is now showing me 4 different suppliers in this category. It's showing me my spend in the last 12 months on the x-axis, and it's showing me my margin on the y-axis, which in this case is a combination of rebates as well as off-invoice margin, because it brings the sale price in as well. And what this is helping me to do in this case is look at redistributing spend across these particular suppliers, as well as increasing or decreasing the overall spend. So my example I gave earlier of we might build more houses next year in the UK, so we might sell some more bricks. That those adjustments can all be made via very simple sliders, and this will help you to create the optimum overall kind of spend across different suppliers. And from there, we can then drill down into a particular supplier and start looking at the individual deal and what the impact of that deal would be. So this is these are all fictitious examples, And so for this particular supplier, what we said is in 2016 we spent 1.3 million of spend, and that generated 275,000 of rebate. Okay, and if we did exactly the same again, which of course we won't, but it's still an indication, if we did exactly the same 1.3 million spend again, based on this particular deal, it will actually generate a rebate income of 436,000. And what's very important to note with this is, again, the granularity at which we are doing this. So this 1.3 million is a consolidation of every product to every branch every day, and of course that's for many different categories of products, because this supplier supplies across those categories.
Yep.
So with this modelling, it's really important to be able to look at it on an individual category by category or product by product basis, and to immediately be able to change that and see what would happen, see what the effect would be, which is what this baseline earnings allows you to do.
Sure.
You can imagine doing that in a spreadsheet would be very
horrendous.
time-consuming.
Yeah.
Exactly. So from there, we can continue to tweak the model, and when we're happy, we can go through a workflow. And this workflow is then about getting approval and getting that deal signed off and published, at which point we can generate a very attractive trading agreement. And a key point I wanted to make as well is that this is much more than rebates. So yes, we have individual rebate deals on here, but we also can include things like which products the supplier has agreed to supply and what the actual invoice price is for those products, what the payment terms are, what the settlement discount is. That can all be on here. So in terms of smart trading and agreeing really good agreements with suppliers, this trading agreement is all encompassing.
Great.
So I'm conscious of time. We've only got a few minutes left, and we've got some questions coming in, which we can look at. But that's really just a quick preview of some of the tools that we offer, addressing some of those broader challenges and opportunities.
Yeah. So, let's just have a look at the questions here. So, question coming in: not all rebates between manufacturers and distributors are realised. Do we have a disposition to code and track these?
I mean, I certainly see that many rebates are not claimed, and what we tend to talk about, in fact, this slide is a useful pointer to this, is the first point is looking at rebates that are due but not claimed. So this is what Scott's point is about, and certainly a systematised approach will systematically claim every single cent or penny that is due, because we are looking at, let's say, the goods receipts of all the goods, and we're checking them against every single deal, and we are absolutely finding millions of pounds and millions of dollars in many cases for those missed rebates. We kind of covered that in the last webinar, didn't we? And today we've been focusing more on the second or third bullet point, in fact, which is saying how can we look at additional growth, really, and additional rebate. So that's what we focused on today, but it's certainly the case that the first stage is literally claiming the missing rebate, and that's exactly what we do. So clients will tend to load in, say, last year's deals first, and then compare the results they get from what they calculated, and then go and claim the missing.
Yeah. A second one coming in: do you have a rebate history by supplier and to branch and then to account? Is there a view of account history, which is very important, especially with the usage of activity costing by account?
Absolutely. Well, yeah, activity-based costing is certainly something which a number of our clients do, and we do maintain that very, very detailed audit trail. So again, we can go through, this is Scott asking this question, we can go through some of the demo from the first webinar with you, Scott, because we do have a full rebate collection and age debtor feature, and the allocation of rebate and the distribution of rebate as well between individual branches and so on. So I think the granularity that we have, once again, of calculating the rebate for the product, for the branch, for the day, and being able to distribute that back to the relevant entities is certainly very relevant here.
Okay. We're just about on time. Just a couple more points, really. As Andrew pointed out a lot of our customers are finding missing rebate, and today's focus has really been how do we make smarter deals, increase the rebates, and typically we'll see 1 to 3% improvement through opportunities and risks alert just by me being able to take the data, analyze it, look at the performance, and then make smarter deals. So what we need to do is summarize on the key stages of benefit that we see with our clients. And in the first webinar, we were talking about taking control and gaining efficiency and really looking at how rebates can be calculated precisely and how we can find missing rebates. In this webinar, we've been looking at how we can drive a different supplier conversation and look at the audit trail and create a transparency between distributors and manufacturers, and really start to put the foundations in for driving a more profitable relationship between merchants and suppliers. And what we're going to look at in the third webinar, which is coming up on the 10th of May, is how do we put in place processes and that collaboration process to really grow. And just as a sort of precursor to that, Andrew, I just really want to, as we start to look forward, what do you see as the sort of the top 5 areas of collaboration that are coming through the conversations that we're having with suppliers and distributors?
Sure. Well, I'll keep this very brief because I'm conscious that we're now slightly over time, but just to hopefully whet people's appetite on the next webinar, what we're seeing a lot of interest in is collaboration on product catalogue, live trading agreement, which means the same trading agreement set up in the same system on both the supplier side and the merchant side, calculating at the same rate, the same accruals, so taking away all of that misinterpretation. Sharing and collaboration around forecasts, and also more into price management and price changes. So we started out very much as rebates specifically, but actually encapsulating that kind of price control and price change control, and finally new product introduction. So those really, product catalogue, live trading agreements, forecasts, price management, and new product introduction would be the top 5.
Okay. So just to summarise, the next webinar is on May 10th, which is really, as we said, talking about trading partner collaboration. We do have a guest speaker joining us for this particular webinar, which is Jeremy Bowley. He has got a lot of experience in working with suppliers and looking at the procurement processes. I know Jeremy from old, and he's a very highly entertaining and knowledgeable presenter. So just to wrap up, if you do have any further questions, you can contact us through the website. Just really leaves me to thank you, Andrew, for your time, and thank you everyone for attending, and we look forward to seeing you on May 10th.
Yeah, thank you, Mike, and I hope everyone has found that interesting in terms of some of the ideas that we've been through. Thank you very much.
Thank you.